Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma, and I do appreciate you being with me. Okay, we are continuing our closer look at Daniel chapter 12, the end of the age, and Sukot as it relates to the harvest and the end of the age. And the reason for this is quite simple. Sukot in Israel's festal calendar was at what they call, the turning of the year. It was at the end of the year. But while it was at the turning of the year, what's interesting is that the day after the seventh day of Sukkot, they had this feast called Shemini Atzeret. Shemini Atzeret occurred, obviously, at the end of Sukkot, and it represented new beginnings. It represented new creation. Now, we have a whole lot more to say about that when we finish Sukkot. But for now, we want to focus even more on Daniel chapter 12. And I'm spending this time to show us how absolutely critical it is that we understand the connection between Daniel chapter 12 and New Testament eschatology. It's amazing to me, and you can call me naive, you can call me whatever you want, but it's rather amazing to me when people go to the book of Daniel, and look, I know what the scholarly consensus is. I've been reading the scholars on Daniel for years and years and years and years, okay? So it's not like I don't know what the scholars say. The thing is, I believe the scholars are wrong when they tell us that Daniel chapter 2 is about the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. I believe the scholars are wrong when they tell us that Daniel 9 is not messianic. Oh, it's about the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. And by the way, let me share with you at this point. I did a series of videos, DVDs. If I remember correctly, it's like 21 of them on Daniel chapter 9 and the 70 weeks. I am not aware of anyone that has done anything like it. I'm sure there are, but I'm just not familiar with it. Demonstrating that Daniel 9 was not fulfilled in the time of Antiochus, demonstrating that Daniel foretold Jesus and his ministry, that Daniel foretold the end time resurrection. All of it fulfilled by the end of the Old Covenant age in AD 70. You can access this. I mean, you can order it in DVD, you can order it in MP3, or you can order it in download off of my website. Just go to my store and just look up Daniel chapter 9. Okay, all that. So, like I said, I'm very familiar with the scholarly literature. I just don't see it being accurate. Now, does Daniel actually predict the time of Antiochus Epiphanes? Sure does. Daniel chapter 8, Daniel chapter 10, all the way into and part of chapter 11. But then it changes the focus to the last days and the days of Rome's superiority and Rome's ascendancy. So you got two subjects here, there's no question. But when scholars say, oh, Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Daniel 9, Daniel 12, every single one of these is nothing but the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, it just simply does not work. Okay. So Daniel chapter 12 takes us to the time of the Great Tribulation, the time of the resurrection, the time of the end, the time of the righteous shining forth in the kingdom at the end of the age. And again, the resurrection, Daniel chapter 12, 10 through 13. So, this morning I want to share with you, yesterday I shared with you part of Daniel chapter 12:10, that at the time of the end, the wicked will not understand, but the wise will, for knowledge shall be increased. And how dispensationalists especially tell us, well, that's talking about the computer age. That's talking about right now. Instead of seeing that it relates to the restoration of the prophetic office, but then only for a short time, until the time of the end. If you didn't watch that, please go back and watch it. So what I want to do now is focus on what Daniel was told, in which he was told, verse 3. I'm reading from the New American Standard. Those who have insight will shine brightly like the brightness of the expanse of heaven, and those who lead the many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Now, this verse is extremely full of significance. I won't have time to get to all of it today. But I want to focus on this issue that at the time of the end, and that's what it's all about, seal the vision, Daniel, until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. So I want to look at this concept of the righteous shining forth in the kingdom. First of all, I want you to notice something really, really incredible about this. Now remember, verse 2 is talking about the resurrection. And verse 3 is joined to it with that coordinating conjunction in the Greek, the word kai, which joins verse 2 with verse 3. Just like verse 2 is linked to verse 1 by the same conjunction in the Greek, the Septuagint. Those who, and just recently, last week as a matter of fact, I was in correspondence with a guy who told me, well, verse 1, the Great Tribulation, that was in the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. When I demonstrated that could not be true, because what happened in the time of Antiochus Epiphanes bore no resemblance whatsoever to what happened in AD 70. Period. End of story. Well, then he shifted gears when I showed the correlation between Matthew 13 and Matthew 24, verse 15 and following, and he said, no, Matthew 24 is different from Daniel chapter 12. When I challenged him to show the difference, he wouldn't do it. He just simply changed the subject. But here's the deal. There's something more than a little remarkable here. Now, remember, people take Matthew chapter 13 as the end of human history, the end of time. The end of time where there is no more sin, there's no more evangelism. Well, I'm going to read from the good old King James, first of all, in Daniel chapter 12, verse 3. They that are wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. Well, here's the New American Standard version of it. Those who have an insight will shine brightly like the brightness of the expanse of heaven, and those who lead the many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Folks, do you catch the power of this? Remember, this is the time of the resurrection. And it says, at the time of the resurrection, those who lead many to righteousness will shine like the stars. In other words, at the time of the resurrection, those who convert people to the Lord will shine like the stars. But wait a minute. I didn't think there was any conversion at the time of the resurrection. Remember, this is the end of human history, we are told. This is the end of the Christian age when there is no more evangelism. But Daniel chapter 12, verse 3 is talking about the time when those who lead many to righteousness will shine like the stars. Folks, this is devastating to the idea that the time of the resurrection is the end of all evangelism. And notice, it does not say those who had led many to righteousness, as in saying, well, the time of evangelism was past. No, it is literally those who lead. Those who are continuing to lead at the time of the resurrection. So let me say again, this is absolutely incredible. And then we have this statement, those who lead many to righteousness shall shine like the stars and the firmament that will shine forever and forever. Now, it's interesting to me that some scholars actually teach that what Daniel was being told was that at the time of the resurrection, the righteous who lead others to righteousness will literally, visibly shine. I'm sorry, that really doesn't make a lot of sense. If that's what Daniel is being told, it's the only place in the Bible that makes any such comment that I'm aware of. Maybe I missed something. Who knows? It's always possible. But here's what I really want to get to. I've already mentioned to you this gentleman, and he's a nice guy, how he and others, he's not alone, how he and others insist that, well, no, Daniel was not predicting the time of Jesus. Daniel is not messianic. Oh, well, except verse 2 and verse 13 that are unannounced, unindicated interjections into the narrative. No one's ever offered a syllable of proof to prove that, but they interject their eisegetic ideas about the resurrection, and they say, well, okay, Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, yeah, that's at time of Antiochus Epiphanes, but verse 2, the resurrection, that's got to be the end of time. Everyone knows that's the end of time. Therefore, this is just this unannounced, unindicated interjection. Folks, that is allowing presuppositions to drive interpretation. That is not the way to do biblical interpretation. So here's what I'm getting at. Once again, we're told Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, Antiochus Epiphanes. Daniel chapter 12, verse 2, end of time. Daniel chapter 3, according to whoever you read, that once again is Daniel chapter 12, verse 2. Some sources even say, well, yeah, verse 2 and verse 3 are linked grammatically. Well, if Daniel chapter 12, 2 and 3 are linked grammatically, then Daniel chapter 12, verse 1 and verse 2 are linked grammatically, because they both have the coordinating conjunction chi in the Septuagint. But if verse 3, all right, if verse 3 is linked to verse 2, and it is grammatically, here's what you've got to catch. Once again, we're told, well, okay, Daniel 12 is a whole lot about Antiochus Epiphanes. Verse 2, end of time. And while some commentators comment on verse 3, a lot of them don't like to tell us what it is. But again, here's what I'm getting at. Daniel chapter 12 and verse 3, then shall the righteous shine forth as the stars in the firmament. Now watch this. In Matthew chapter 13, 39 to 43, then the Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather together the elect into the barn. They shall gather the wheat or tares and cast them into the fire. So shall it be at the end of the age. All the way down through verse 43. Then when? Oh, the time of the harvest. The time of the end of the age. When the righteous would shine. Then shall the righteous shine forth in the kingdom. What is Jesus doing? He is drawing directly from Daniel chapter 12, verse 3, the righteous shining forth in the kingdom at the time of the resurrection. Oh, at the time of the end. And once again, guess what? If you're going to tie verse 2 with verse 3, then you got to tie verse 3 with verse 4. So that means that Daniel chapter 1 is the only verse here that is talking about the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. Oh, but wait, they come to verse 6 and 7 when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered. They say, oh, well, no, that's the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. Do you see what a mess is made of Daniel chapter 12? Oh, Antiochus Epiphanes. End of time. Oh, time of Antiochus Epiphanes. How is anyone supposed to make any sense of that? And how would we know that? Were we not being told about this dichotomy of subjects, about this difference of subjects? How would we know that? Were we not being told that by someone who has a preconceived idea of what the resurrection is, and their preconceived idea of resurrection doesn't fit the text, so they just say, oh, well, that's what it is. You just have to take my word for it. I'm sorry. I, for one, am not going to follow that kind of eisegetic, presuppositional, anti-hermeneutical, anti-exegetical type of biblical interpretation. Now, next Monday, I'm going to show you where Daniel puts the time of the righteous shining forth in the kingdom. In the meantime, don't forget to join me Friday as I continue my review and response to Brian Hodges' book, The Problems with Preterism. Don't forget to join Mike Sullivan and me tonight on Christian apologetics. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you on the flip side.